of the session is being recorded. If you do not want to appear on screen, feel free to turn off your camera. We encourage all participants to join us however you are most comfortable. But if you are able to be involved, we do ask that you unmute and communicate with us. If you're unable to do that, you can post your comments in the chat, and I will do my best to call those out verbally for everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited for our Take Your Seat chat with Jerusha Stewart, the co-founder and CEO of Take Your Seat. This is an amazing organization that is doing very similar work to what our Women on Board Leadership Academy for the foundation was trying to, or is working towards doing. So the thing that sets Jerusha's program apart is that they actually do a lot more. Is not only do they do work with the government boards and the nonprofit boards, but Take Your Seat also does work with the corporate boards. And that is one area that we found a lot of folks wanted to learn more about and wanted more information about during the Women on Board Leadership Academy that went between, or that started in August of 2020 and wrapped in May of 2021. And so we're really excited to bring Jerusha here this evening to speak with all of us and share about her organization and the work that they're doing and how each of us can get involved to take our seats. And so with that, I'm going to hand the Zoom over to Miss Jerusha Stewart.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Takeda. This is a fabulous looking group. For those of you who even aren't on camera, your photos are gorgeous. And so I can see that you show up well. So I thought that we'd have a casual conversation this evening around the board service. And let me just start by kind of laying out the playing field when it comes to corporate boards. So this has probably been the most active year for corporate board appointments for underrepresented groups. So by that, I mean women, Black people, any racially diverse group that before hasn't really had representation on a board, Latinx, Asian. And part of that, it's being driven by what I call several equity accelerators. So you're all probably familiar with the California law that requires that 30% of a board be non-white males, right? So it can be women, it can be Black people. And by the way, this type of legislation has now spread to Europe. Germany is in fact also considering the same type of legislation. Also, you have equity accelerators being driven by organizations like Goldman Sachs, which takes companies public, which also has a 30% rule, as well as companies like Wells Fargo, which have tied executive compensation to how diverse their workforce and their boards are showing up. And then finally, there is the NASDAQ rule, which was recently okayed by the SEC, which really isn't a mandate, but it's more of a way for companies to actually show their representation on their boards and how diverse they are. And it basically lays out a matrix to show the companies what counts as being a diverse board. So one of the things the NASDAQ rule does is actually put a value, the idea of diversity and inclusion on a corporate board. And this is really, really important. You know, this is one of our biggest capitalist institutions. This is the first time this has happened. So it's pretty exciting to get this kind of attention on diversity. It also allows the companies, it empowers them and their boards to make a case for diversity. Because that's part of the issue, is this idea of tying a company's ROI to DEI. And one of the things that we do know, there's a survey called Diversity Wins by McKinsey, and it points out that boards that are racially diverse perform 36% better than their peers. So double-digit margins there. And it's one of the reasons we at Take Your Seat are focused on building diverse boards. So we have a vision of equifying life across all areas of the human experience, healthcare, education, lifestyle, finances, and of course, boards and beyond. We want to empower boards by having them increase the number of Black directors on their corporate boards to build the inclusive boards of the future, which will lead to better corporate performance. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited to be here with you this evening. So I thought I would break my talk up into several sections. One being why board service, like why are you interested in being on a board? How to get on a board, and what happens, like how do you show up? So why do you want to join a board? Have you thought about your why for being on a board? Is it to be of service? Is it because you're interested in helping businesses build better businesses? And have you thought about what kind of company that you would like to sit on the board of? Because there are, of course, all kinds of industries, and you don't necessarily have to pair your operational experience. So let's say you're in healthcare. You don't necessarily have to sit on just healthcare boards, because what you do as a board member is you advise. So you take your broader skill set of experience and use that to help the CEO of a company set direction. And there are all kinds of boards where you can advise the leadership. So I know, as Takeda mentioned, that most of you have looked at nonprofit boards. At Take Your Seat, we work with public boards, private boards, typically pre-IPO, but we do have some public company boards where we're helping them seat diverse candidates, as well as nonprofit boards. We've had interest from mutual fund boards. Currently, we have an event on our site for the Federal Reserve Board, which is currently looking for members. So it's really important to do your homework, right? And think about what kind of board you'd like to join and where you feel you'd be of value. And it's also important in this first step to educate yourself about boards. Like, where did they come from? What's the history of boards? What's their purpose? And for that, I'm going to recommend a book called How Boards Work by Dambisa Moyo. And I'm going to put her book in the chat here. It's a fabulous treatise on where boards come from, their European tradition, how that's been applied in the United States. And it basically kind of gives you an overall framework for what is behind the structure, our current structure. So I highly recommend that. There's a lot to learn. I know a lot of people don't necessarily think so, but when it comes to boards and being able to show up as a valuable member in the boardroom, there's a lot to learn. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm just kind of curious as to, by a show of hands, how many of you are interested in board service? Yeah, okay, you're in the right place. Great. And you've got the little, I'm about to say, for those of you who can't operate your camera, let's see those hand icons go up. And then if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourselves, I'd be interested in knowing if anyone's thought about what kind of board they'd like to sit on, or if you have previous board experience, what kind of boards you have sat on. Like, what's your interest in board service?
I'll speak up. My name is Roslyn. How are you?
Hi, Rosalind.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on board to speak with us. So for myself, I sat on a couple nonprofit boards here locally, and then I also sit on one of our local government boards. And for me, I work in corporate America, and I really thought that I guess you would have to be invited to sit on one of those types of boards, or it's a very selective process. So I didn't realize it was something that I could look into um, and apply to. And what I'm looking for specifically is really looking to get more engaged on the corporate side with more philanthropy and giving back, advising in that sense. So not any specific industry. What I've done up to this point is really get involved in my employee resource groups with
Mm.
community outreach as a way to kind of start building that bridge. And it's worked, but it still seems like to be a big gap. I honestly thought you had to be more seasoned and, like I said, invited to sit on one of those boards or apply to sit on a corporate board.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your background, Rosalind, and your interests, because you bring up a good point. You know, it's interesting. You do have to be quote unquote invited. It is an invitation, and it's an invitation that could be extended to you for a number of reasons. You have past board experience, you work in corporate America. If you are someone who works at a firm where you happen to touch the boardroom, and that doesn't mean necessarily that you sit on the board, but that you make reports in front of the board. Those are the kinds of skills and experience that corporate companies look for. And they're very much open these days in terms of finding candidates from different backgrounds and different experiences. They realize that they are lacking a bit of knowledge in terms of bringing companies forward. So would anyone else like to share? And while we're doing this, I'm going to put in the chat the link for Take Your Seat. Hi, Rose.
Hi, Jerusha. Thank you again for presenting. I am an assistant director for graduate admissions program. So my main role is recruiting students for the university. And I think as a part of that, I've been able to help the American Association of University Women in its membership capacity by serving on their board, trying to find a younger, not only younger audience, but also students, different constituents that are interested in promoting equity, gender equity for women. And so I've had a really great experience. Our president's on here, Pat DeWitt from AUW of Florida, to learn not only how to make presentations to the board, give updates, but also to kind of give perspective of how we can reach, students or other women that might be interested in men as well to help promote our cause.
Excellent, excellent. And it's interesting because on a couple of different fronts, you'd be interesting to companies because building membership is the same, of course, as building market share. So you'd be very valuable there. And there are many companies that are currently interested in improving their performance in diversity and inclusion. So bringing them that kind of information on the board has become important. And in fact, there has a movement is starting to have a diversity seat on boards. So just like you have an audit committee chair, that you would have possibly that social governance type of committee that would deal with those issues. And I put the Take Your Seat link in the chat to invite all of you to join us, to join our community. One of the things that we've done is created a community to connect candidates with board leaders and CEOs so that we're bridging that networking gap that tends to happen in terms of them saying, hey, we don't know where to find diverse candidates. Because the next thing I'm going to say about board service is, how do you get that invitation that Rosalind so provided right at the top of the hour here? Network, network, and network. And then network again. Board service is all not just about who you know, but it's about who knows you. And that the person who knows you will say something great about you. Because typically 94% of board seats are filled by someone who knows someone. So you're sitting on a board, John looks at Harry and says, hey, do you know anyone? And then Harry says, well, I met this guy on the golf course. So we are changing that behavior by putting diverse candidates in front of the board leaders. So they can no longer say that the reason they don't have diverse boards is because they don't know where to find us. Because I always say we're hiding in plain sight. So you have to do your part to go out and meet them and network. And when I say network, you need to tell everyone you know that you want to sit on a board. Don't be shy about this. This is not the time to hide your light under a bushel or your desire. And you specifically want to tell the people who can help you get a board seat. So that might be the head of a nonprofit. It might be the president of a company. It might be someone else who's sitting on another board. But because board seats don't come up all the time, it's very important to be in the flow of that world and to have your name out there and for people to know of your interest. Because another thing that happens is a lot of the times people who are asked to sit on boards, that wasn't even on their radar. You know, a lot of the time they're retired, they're living their life when somebody calls and says, hey, we could use your help. We could use your expertise to help us solve this particular issue. So you want to think about really amping up your networking skills so that people can find you. And so that this is something that that you are out there, you're well presented, your LinkedIn is up to date, because of course your LinkedIn is the first place they're going to go to find out more about you. And I will say that within this networking framework, one of the things that you'll learn is how to present yourself succinctly so that they know what your secret sauce is. And what do I mean by your secret sauce? So your secret sauce is the skill sets that you bring to the board, like why they would have you on their board, like how you feel that you are of value to a board. So some of the skill sets that people often list as their secret sauce could be social media, digital sales, e-commerce, strategic management, budgeting, mergers and acquisitions, you know, for the bigger companies, strategic direction, relationship building, which I'm sure Rose, you and Rosalind both have several of these that you could list as part of your skill sets. But you're basically looking for that thing that would set you apart on a board. And then most of the work on a board, as some of you may know, is done in committee. So then you have to think about what committees would you want to sit on, right? Would you want to sit on the resources committee? Would you want to sit on the nom-gov committee? Would you want to be on audit? And each one of those committees, of course, requires a different skill set and interest. So now I'm interested in hearing what you think your secret sauce is. What's gotten you where you are today that you think would be of value to a CEO or the executive director of a nonprofit or the head of a company? Oh, I love it. My knowledge and understanding of government and politics, cultivating relationships, another one in the chat. And for me,
building bridges.
Building, who said building bridges?
Rosalind.
Rosalind, that's a great one. That's a great one. Here, Cheryl, we got with finance, budgeting, auditing. Building bridges is such a cool one currently because it's a unique way of saying relationship building. And so much of what's required is building bridges in today's world. Does anyone else want to weigh in? I'm sure there are a few more talents out there to be found. And when we think about, I'll just pop in here. When you think about what your secret sauce is and what that might look like, I would just keep a running list, and I would ask people who know you, choose 5 people who know you well and ask them what shows up when you do. What is that thing that you bring to any situation that they can count on? Is it a particular way that you think? Is it a particular expertise that you may have? Because these things are what the boards are looking for. Now, I am going to, and one of the other things I do want to point out, because I get this question a lot in terms of what are boards looking for right now. So top of mind issues for boards right now, cybersecurity. Because with all this data that we have flying around, how do you keep that safe? Social media, because since George Floyd's murder, and with all of the companies being under such scrutiny, they didn't know how to react with all of this public pressure and how to manage the social media presence as well as they should have. E-commerce, because with the pandemic, so much of sales, traditional sales, have switched over to the e-commerce networks, supply chain, and it's more than just trucks. We've all seen a lot of that on TV lately. The remote workforce, I'm sure many of you are working from home. And of course, diversity, those are all issues that are top of mind for board members. So now I'd really share with you the Take Your Seat platform and why I'm so excited about the community and the resource that we've built. Again, it is one of the first, if not only, devoted to just have Black candidates on boards, increasing the number of Black candidates on boards. And let me see if I can get to that screen. We are super focused on putting Black directors on boards. We feel that Black directors, that we are the dominoes for diversity. And then once we have achieved success in that realm, we plan to open it up to others. So when you come to take your seat, before you get to this page, you would actually, let me just go to, meant to show you where you would sign up, because we have where you get your invitation to join Take Your Seat. So you would go to Take Your Seat. If you pop in that link, there's a link that will take you to joining our community, and the page looks like this. And the invitation, your seat is waiting. And you fill out this short questionnaire, and that prompts us to send you an invitation to take your seat. And you can sign up as a candidate, a board leader, an ally. So it gives you several different options there in terms of how to join the community. And then once you're in the community, very much like a social media platform, our homepage is the newsfeed, where we list all the new articles, the thought leadership that's coming out around diversity and inclusion. You'll also see here our upcoming events. Upcoming events is one of the best places for you to learn more about boards. And the reason I say that, number one, our platform is free, and a lot of the events that we post are free as well. Let me see if I can get back to that page. Went to the Amazon, just shows up everywhere. Okay. Let's see. Let's see if I can get back to that page that I was on. All right, it's booting up. So I'm gonna share that again. So here's our newsfeed page. And as I was mentioning, it has our events. Our membership is free. We partner with all kinds of organizations in the board diversity space. We let you know about their events as well, because we know that this space, it's hard to find everything. A really great event that's coming up is being put on by the University of North Carolina School of Law. They're presenting an online workshop on building your online brand presence. Highly recommend this event. It's December 8th, so it's coming up this week. Anouk is amazing. And she has done so much work in the board space, but she's great because she can show you how to build your online presence beyond the boardroom. So this is a great event to attend even if you're just beginning to think about the boardroom, because she gives you a lot of tips on how to frame yourself. Another one I want to mention is the one about the federal. Someone asked about types of boards and going beyond just nonprofits. This one on bridging the racial wealth gap by serving on the boards of the Federal Reserve. So very few people know that this is an opportunity, and it's an opportunity that you can invite yourself into. And that's also kind of a unique thing for a board. One of the things that's people didn't know before, unless you were into board service, is that it's basically a retirement plan. So you work till you're 65, and then you get asked to sit on a board. And when you're asked to sit on that board, you're paid. You're paid for your time and expertise. And it's work. A board book can be about 300 pages, and you have to give several days of your time, and you may have to fly somewhere. And several of those can replace or better the income that you had when you were working. So that's one of the reasons why they're so highly sought after. It's also one of the reasons why we see this as a new form of reparations or building Black wealth, narrowing that wealth gap for underrepresented groups, because it is a form of wealth that heretofore we were cut off from. Another event that I want to point out that's also on our site that's great, that's coming up, is the Director Diversity Boot Camp. So there is a charge for the boot camp. It's next May, usually sells out. It is not the charge. Usually boot camps like these can be anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000. This boot camp, if you are accepted, is nowhere near that price point. And it is very high value in terms of the speakers and the interactions that you have with your peers who are also on this board service journey with you. Now, speaking of your peers, one of the reasons we created a community is so that you could be on this journey with someone beside yourself. We currently have over 400 members in our community. And look, there's Takeda. I love it. And this is a place for you to share what you're about, what your goals are for board service, why you're interested in this particular realm. And you can ask others what they're up to, what's happening. I also suggest that when you see someone who has a board resume listed on their profile or a board bio, this is a way for you to see what these tools look like in terms of how you get a seat. So let's talk about how are you board ready and how do you get a seat? So take your seat. We're free and we're open to all. So we cover the entire landscape of board service. So that is from aspiring candidates all the way up into veteran board directors who are a part of our community. We are also one of the democratizing the space. So giving everyone access to the education opportunity that's available. We are also believers in transparency. What does that mean? That means we are one of the only places that publicly post board seat opportunities in our community. So we post the board seat opportunities to demystify this entire process. So you can actually see what's being asked of you as a director, which is very important, right? Because you want to know, how often do they meet? What kinds of qualifications are they looking for? What kind of company? Like this is Smart Suites, which is a woman-owned business that is in I think they're like 125 million. They're actually looking for someone with brand equity experience, channel, just, marketing experience, consumer packaged goods. So you can tell what they're asking for and whether or not you have that particular skill set before you even apply. And that's important because you want to apply to the boards where there's a fit with your background and where you have an interest and where you can add value. In terms of being able to kind of negotiate this whole realm, we've created a section on our website, Replay. So in the Replay section, you're going to find tons of videos, dozens of videos about board service from board leaders like Jocelyn Mangan, who has an organization called Him for Her that seats female board members. And interestingly enough, we partnered with her organization. They only accept women at a certain professional level into their organization. We also have videos here on power of nonprofits. So this is a great one to watch if you have served on a nonprofit board, because it talks about how do you leverage your nonprofit board service into a for-profit. Melissa Bradley, she's talking about how she got on her first board. Virginia Walker, same thing. How do you get on your first board? So these are real life community members and board directors who are giving of their time to be of service to the community. And these are short video clips from events that we've had here at Take Your Seat. We do host several events where we actually connect you with board directors so that you can have a conversation and explore board service from your perspective. So I am going to stop sharing for a minute and then take any questions you may have. That was a lot of information. So I'm going to stop, and if you have questions, I can answer those. Oh, Wilnita.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. It was great. My question is, earlier you mentioned networking. So I already joined your website, the organization, but it's how do you network strategically? Like, let's say, for example, I want to be on the board of Verizon. It's an example. How would I strategically network to get that opportunity or meet someone in that area?
Well, you can search in the Take Your Seat community to see if anyone there works at Verizon or is a director at Verizon. You can look to see first even whether your skill sets, right, fit the interest of the Verizon board. Like what is Verizon up to these days? What problems are they facing? And then you might network with thought leaders who are connected with Verizon. So does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, and the thing I would say, because this tends to be a marathon, not a sprint, like this is relationship building at the speed of trust. So what you're literally doing is putting yourself in their ecosystem. You're putting yourself in their realm. You know, one of Emma Battle, if you watch her, I think she's got a video where she talks about one of her first public board seats she got because she was actually a consultant to the company. And they saw how well she solved an issue for them. And they just, when they had an open board seat, they decided to consider her for that seat. So you can touch a company in a number of different ways in order to position yourself as a good fit for their board. Another thing to do is to look at the backgrounds of their current board members. So you're going to look at where those board members are coming from to see what companies they've touched, so that you then have points of connection potentially within the board, the sitting board already. Make sense?
Yes, it does. And thank you very much for the insight.
Thank you for asking that great question. Oh, Patricia is asking, what's the geographic reach of Take Your Seats? I noticed Smart Suites is in Canada. So it's interesting. Patricia, that's a great question. We do have members from Europe. We do not currently seat European boards. That's something we're looking at in the future. One of our largest partners is B Lab, which certifies B Corps in the United States and Canada. So we will seat boards in Canada. And that doesn't mean you have to be Canadian. So we don't, they don't typically list that as a requirement. And in fact, it's kind of interesting because we just worked with a board that, so they sat a Canadian member and they sat an American member. And it just happened that this was because of where their market share was and the expertise that they needed. So boards aren't typical. Every once in a while, we get a board search that's geographically restrictive. Like we just did a search, produced candidate profiles for NACD Research Triangle in North Carolina, and they wanted to have someone that had to sit board members who are from the Research Triangle area. Typically, boards are not that restrictive because number one, they're doing meetings on Zoom. Number two, they can get you on a plane. And number three, they are typically looking for a broader reach for their business. So they want to be able to tap into talent from different geographic locations. So thank you for that question. And let me scroll across and see if there are any other questions. So I have a question for you. I'd like to know personally, what has been everyone's experience with board service? Like, which part of the journey are you in? Are you just starting? Are you sitting on a nonprofit board? Are you ready to jump to a corporate board like Rosalind? Like, where is everyone on this landscape?
I'll start. I actually have worked with boards and managed boards, but I have not actually ever served on any board of any kind.
And that's a shame, because if you can manage a board, you're definitely valuable. And Takeda, would you say, what types of boards?
They're nonprofit boards. And I have a lot of experience working with government boards, which is kind of where I'm looking to jump into first. But I definitely have an interest in corporate boards because of the financial component, number one. But number two, the ability, it's something I've never really thought about, is the ability to affect what's happening in corporate America. As a political person, you can affect the government. And so I kind of see board service in the corporate corporate realm as an opportunity to be that voice in the boardroom that's setting the vision for the company. Because that's, I think, like putting people and diverse peoples in boardrooms is important, but having people who are willing to speak up about the issues that they're seeing in those companies is so important.
That is such an excellent issue. This next phase of board governance is all about empowering boards to make equitable decisions across the landscape of human life. And you're right, this is the most powerful table. So yes, you can affect change in politics, and you can affect systemic, broad sweeping change through corporate America. That's what we all do, right? We vote with our pocketbooks. So when you're in the boardroom affecting the direction of that company and you're using their pocketbook, you can affect big change in the world. So you're seeing it exactly as it should be.
In the chat, Patricia asks, the AAUW would like to do more to help women of all kinds join corporate boards. How can they help you? So Patricia is actually the president of the AAUW of Florida. So you have the statewide president here asking, how can you help? How can she help?
I am so honored to have you here tonight, Patricia. Thank you so much for joining us. This is fantastic. And it's fantastic that you are here to carry that flag. I would say anytime you can bring up the idea of board service, it is so under the radar for most people. And if any group of women should be involved with board service, yes, university graduates, right? They've gone on to professional careers. And really what's in number one job of a board director is to advise. Your job is to advise the CEO of a company because of your background. And when you're a highly educated woman, you're going to have a ton of experience that you can gift that company with, that you can use to shape their direction. And I would love to work with you, take your seat. We do have micro communities on our platform. So for example, Harvard's alumni group, they had a similar mission where they want to inspire board service for Harvard alums. So we're building a micro community within Take Your Seat for them to meet with their peers and to share, to be on that board service journey together. Because that's also one of the things that we've discovered is very important, is to not go it alone. You know, this really is all about networking and building your networks and strengthening your connections. And so having a community that you can reach into and take advantage of resources and information and education is so important. So I would love to get together with you after this call and talk more about that. I'll put my email in the chat. And if anyone else wants to reach out to me about board service, please do, because I just feel so passionate about underrepresented groups having a voice in the boardroom, and as well about empowering the boards. You know, it's interesting because we see the boards as being the power table, and yet I feel that the board itself does not always recognize the power it has in creating a better future. So this idea of being able to say to them, yes, I know that you're concerned about DEI. I know that you don't feel you know where to find good candidates. I know that you're scared that you might say or do the wrong thing when you have a person of color in the room. That's why I do what I do. That's why Take Your Seat is here, is to help build the inclusive boardrooms of the future with the board directors. Because we're only going to get there if we're all in this together and we're all working together to move forward. So I think having each of you on this call, thinking about board service, doing the work, educating yourselves, joining Take Your Seat, joining other groups as they become available to you, and just really broadening your knowledge about board service. It's not only going to serve you, but it's going to serve the country and the world as a whole. And I have another question. What is the scariest thing that people think about board service?
For me, one of the things I'm hesitant about is I think maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome. Do I have enough experience? Will these people at the table look at me and value the things that I have to say and my suggestions? And so that's one of the reasons I hesitated even joining a nonprofit board before I was asked to. And then I just jumped in, and I really love giving back. So.
And what happened? Did they take your suggestions?
Yes, they did. And, you know, it's been a very rewarding experience. I can't lie and not say that I'm not a little nervous on the corporate side, because I think that the willingness to be open to new ideas sometimes is a little bit more of an uphill battle there. Because, you know, we've been doing it this way for years. The board looks the same at a lot of corporations, and they're not used to listening to that new voice or that diverse voice in the room, based off of some feedback that I've gotten from other folks.
Yes, the corporate boardroom, you're right, it's a little different. And yet there are corporate boards that have sought out the diverse voice. You know, one of the really important things as a new would-be director is to do your homework to find out about that board. Like, how receptive are they to diverse voices, new ideas? Are they just filling a slot, or do they really want to have someone who looks like you on that board? Because our experience has been that the boards where this is of their choosing, you know, and they're authentically wanting to build an inclusive board, that a lot of times they're kind of as scared as you are. Like, they have a different lack of confidence, right? Because this is an unfamiliar territory for boards to walk into, to have board members that don't look like them. So they're looking for advice. They're looking to grow their knowledge. They're looking to have a different experience. So I would encourage you to banish the imposter syndrome wherever and whenever it shows up, and do your homework on the board and the company and look for that best place to land.
Do you recommend reaching out, and obviously, you know, do some research on the existing board members, but if we feel that we may be comfortable asking some of their existing board members or previous board members, is that a good move to just be able to be direct with them and kind of ask about their experience in serving on that board?
Yes. Now, if it's someone that you feel that you would be comfortable asking and they would be comfortable answering, you know, there's no rule against that. You know, some directors may feel that that's something they don't want to comment on. You know, one of the things that is true about the boardroom is what happens in the boardroom to a certain extent stays in the boardroom. It is a confidential environment, but for those public decisions that get announced. And the number one rule for the boardroom is consensus building. So what board members are very much focused on at times is whether or not this person they're going to bring into the room is a fit. Can they get along with this person? Do they see themselves sharing ideas with this person? And in a way, that's what makes having someone who doesn't look like you a little bit harder, because they don't always know how to make those evaluations, because they don't have a lot of personal experience with people who don't look like them.
Okay, thank you.
But I would say, don't let that stop you. And another thing I'll say on that is sometimes you can find public comments from the directors that will let you know in what direction the board leans. So that's another way to kind of get to that. But if you are being considered for a board seat, that's definitely a question I would ask.
Thank you.
Don't be afraid to ask that question, because you don't want to get in that boardroom and then are like, wow, this was a hotter seat than I thought, or it's not the seat that I thought. And I think so I want to say to everyone, asking these kinds of questions, that's what's going to make it more the norm for boards. If there's, the elephant's in the boardroom and nobody's asking the question, then it's never going to change, because they don't have the experience of getting comfortable with the question. They get we all have to be in a place where we're okay to make mistakes. This is really all about failing forward. This is how we're all going to learn to get along with each other. And it's why we say building this boardroom, we're building it at the speed of trust for all of us. And it's kind of interesting because, yes, you may not think that you have the skill set to be in that boardroom. We can help with that. That's why we built the community at Take Your Seat, so that you would have the resources of people who've gotten further along on this journey that you can ask questions about. Board members who can tell you, yeah, I think you're ready. You have what you need. Board resumes and board bios that you can see, so you can see what ready is. Because before this generation of new directors, you have to remember, before 2019, there was no such thing as being board ready. People got board ready in the boardroom. That's when you got board ready. There wasn't necessarily a board class that you took. And to this day, there's no required certifications for becoming a board member. So please, please do remember that. Do not take yourself out of the game or out of the room before you've even gotten there. I mean, put yourself, if this is something, if you believe that you can advise a company or an organization for their better, and this really is about advising, it's not about your operation skills, it's not about how you do something. This really is more about the questions you ask. And that's one of the ways you'll know you're board ready, is when you can ask questions versus telling someone how to do it. You can ask a question that has them determine how to do it. So I would say just always, just stay in the game and come join Take Your Seat. We'd love to have all of you. I'd love to be on your board service journey with you. Next year is going to be a very big year for us. We're super excited. We're launching our new platform, and we are launching our first candidate cohort. And we will have a very unique, first of its kind cohort training for candidates, where you'll actually get some practical experience in a boardroom. So we'll be partnered with different companies to offer you a bigger peek inside the boardroom. And we're super excited about that.
That's amazing, Jerusha. It sounds like you've got some really cool stuff on the horizon going into next year. I can't recommend it to everyone enough to get on the Take Your Seat website, sign up, um, do as I say and not as I do, because I'm still working on filling out my profile. But it is on my to-do list. It really is every week. The resources section of the website is also phenomenal. The videos, the events. So I definitely highly recommend you take a look. If you're interested in talking more with Jerusha, she has put her email in the chat. Definitely encourage you to reach out to her directly. But thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge and your understanding. Because when we started our Women on Board Leadership Academy, it specifically focused on government and nonprofit boards. And there were so many people asking us for more information about the corporate boards. And I will just say, Jerusha mentioned that training, it's $500. I pulled up the application for the training. That blew me away, because when I was looking at other trainings around the country, they're literally $5,000. Like,
yep.
So like, we have one of our board members just paid over $6,000 to take a similar program in California. So definitely take a look at that. The opportunities are there. And I cannot stress enough, really don't do this alone. I thought that was an amazing thing to say, Jerusha. And it seems like with this new movement of diversity on the boards, it's very similar to running for political office, right? We as women don't want to run for office until we know we're 130% qualified.
Right.
But men and other folks tend to think, oh, I can do that. I've got 30% of the skill sets that I need. And they just run and they win. And I think it's the same thing with the board. I tell women all the time in our political campaign trainings, you can't wait until you're ready. There's no such thing as being ready to run. It's literally, are you ready to just jump into it and learn while you're going? And I've never heard building at the speed of trust, but I love that. I think that's very powerful.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind is you're not necessarily putting yourself in the ring when you go out for board service. So when you join Take Your Seat, your profile is visible to board leaders who are looking for board directors. Okay. So you just have to take the first step of joining Take Your Seat. We provide you with the build out your profile and present yourself, but you're in the game now. You're now visible. You can declare yourself, your desire to be a candidate, and then we're looking and the companies are looking. So you may not be the one. It's funny. You may not be the one who chooses whether you're board ready or not. The company may decide, hey, this person looks like they'd be a great director. Let's talk with them.
Absolutely.
And
well, I'm sorry, now 2 minutes over, so I just want to be cognizant of everyone's time. Did you have would you like to wrap it up with just a few more minutes of something?
I'll just say, Take Your Seat. We'll take very good care of you. Make that your holiday gift to yourself and the way you start off the new year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for your time tonight, for starting Take Your Seat and really running this program, because you're doing amazing work. And we're really excited to continue partnering moving forward with you. Thank you everyone who's here this evening. I know December is, everyone's getting into the holidays. So we really appreciate you joining us. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Happy holidays. And if I don't see you, I can't believe we're already at this point, but Happy New Year.
I know, Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, folks. Have a great evening.